Hey, friends, and welcome to the Next Best Thing podcast. I'm your host, Aundrea, Cline-Thomas. I'm here to help you live the life that you design instead of choosing a life you think you have to settle for. Let this podcast be your co-pilot. Allow it to be your guide. Today it's just going to be me and you. I'm not going to take too much of your time. I'm just here really quickly to stop by to tell you that don't wait until you're ready to prepare. Do not wait until you're ready to prepare. It's something that I've been hearing a lot in my work with journalists. I have told you about this before. I think it's last week that I co-founded a program called The Rewrite, and it's for journalists and storytellers looking to reinvent their careers. And sometimes the feedback that we get is I'm not ready for a transition just yet, right? And that is used in the context of not doing the work now that they could reap the benefits of in the future. They want to wait until they're ready to begin the work that will yield a result at a later date. And so I'm just here to say that here's the thing, the time that you're waiting for, that whole time construct, it might be arbitrary. And this is how I learned that the hard way. You know, I'm all about telling you the ways that I didn't do stuff right. So you don't have to go ahead and make the mistakes that I did. So this is how I learned that. So my first reporting job was in Macon, Georgia, and I was making $18,000 a year. Did you know, fun fact, that $18,000 a year gets taxed? So I had money coming out of my $18,000 a year. I was working overtime, just struggling. I was on the struggle bus. Applebee's was my special meal. Sometimes on payday, I go to curbside pickup, give me a fried chicken salad. I don't know what the dressing was, but that was my jam. Only a few times, though, because I couldn't afford really anything. I digress. After 2 years of being in Macon, my news director called me into his office, and he was saying, okay, I want to make you an offer to stay. All right. So he wants to make me an offer to stay. Remember, I was making $18,000 a year. And the offer that he was making me to stay for 1 year, where I would have to sign a contract for 1 year, would be making, you ready? Are you ready? $19,000 a year. Womp, womp, womp. So I remember thinking this, I don't know if I said it out loud, that is not even an extra gallon of milk per paycheck, right? Like that amounts to 0.0000. And long story short, I did not take the offer, because if y'all are new to me, if we haven't met, like I've been in this space for a very, very long time, where if I am backed up against the wall, I'm not a loud person, but if you put my back against the wall, I might start doing stuff that you don't expect. So I told them, all right, no, I'm not going to actually take that offer, and I will leave. So I made the decision unilaterally. I didn't really talk to anybody about it because it just seemed so obvious to me. It was hard. It was a hard decision to make because I had nothing lined up. But it seemed obvious to me. So anyway, I was going to go back home, right? And so I had to call my parents to say, all right, well, I'm going to go back home. So I was like, all right, how can I do this to lessen the blow? So I was like, let me call my dad first. I'm going to call my dad, and he's going to run interference for my mom, right? That was the plan, because even if my dad thought I was like the craziest person on the planet, he would be real monotone when addressing me. And then he'll say whatever to my mom, but he would just be real monotone when addressing me. So, but I still was nervous, right? So I call my dad. He's the first person I tell, I believe. And I was like, all right, well, dad, my boss came to me, and, working here, making $18,000 a year. He already thought that was absolutely crazy that I took this job in the first place, but I needed to get my foot in the door. And I was like, well, They offered me $19,000 a year to stay for a year, but I told them no. He's like, they offered you what? I was like, oh, they offered me $19,000. And my dad goes, they don't want you. They don't want you. Come home. All right, so my family is African, right? And so being a straight shooter is just the bare minimum. It's just how we enter things is just, let me tell you how I feel in the moment. So with my dad reinforcing that they don't actually want you there, I ended up driving my little Toyota Corolla from Macon, Georgia back to Maryland. And for the context, this was fall of 2008. So you remember what was happening in 2008? This was right before the election. Remember what was happening at that time? Yeah, the bottom was starting to fall out of our economy and the Great Recession was starting. And so I decided to not have a job while the Great Recession was starting. Look, we're talking about timing here, right? Like, I didn't say I was a timing expert. So yeah, what I did do is that I ended up getting my old job back. I had been for years working at an orthopedic surgeon's office. Shout out to Greater Washington Orthopedic Group in Silver Spring, Maryland. They are a big part of my story. And the office manager, her kids, her sons, and I went to the same high school. We weren't in the same class. One son was 1 year older, one son was 1 year younger, but she just loved my work ethic and she allowed me to come back. And I came back and I started scheduling surgeries for an orthopedic surgeon. A lot of people don't know this part of my story. And I did that part-time and I was making more money working part-time scheduling surgeries than I was working overtime in Macon, Georgia in my first job. I digress. So I was working kind of part-time, probably like 30 hours a week, 25, 30 hours a week. And then I would go to the University of Maryland where I went to grad school and I would re-edit my tapes. So in news, when you're on air, your resume doesn't actually really matter much. What really matters is your resume tape that has clips of you doing stories. So that is your calling card. So I'd go back to the University of Maryland and I'd freshen up my tape because I wanted it to seem like I was like doing more stuff, kind of as a way to kind of trick news directors a little bit. And so I would do that. So it was just like such a grind of like every few weeks I'd be back. And this is tape to tape time, like dating myself. So I'm like editing. There's no easy editing at that time. You are editing a new tape together. But I had it down. I had it down to a science and I would do this. And by the way, I had an agent at this time. I got an agent way too early in my career. It's a long story. And so, but I've never been the type of person to just hand over my career to somebody else and say, hey, you go ahead and do it. I know there are lots of people in the business who do that. I was never going to be that person because I've always been of the opinion that no one is going to care about my career more than I do. And so I'm not just going to sit back and like wait for somebody else to do the work. And I didn't want to hear about all your other clients and what you're doing for them because I don't care. I care about what my prospects are and I care about that. So I'm going to also be side by side. And I saw it more as a partnership of I'm going to be side by side doing the work. And, you know, sometimes that was like welcome and sometimes that caused a little bit of friction. But again, it was my life and I felt responsible for my life. So him and I were going back and forth, back and forth. And then it came a point where, you know, I was also networking, right? And so my family, again, is African, so I didn't come with a built-in network. All the networks have been stuff that we've created, right? So I had the University of Maryland network. My undergrad network wasn't really active so much at that time. And I didn't go to J school there. So, you know, they were like in finance and other things, nursing, education, not necessarily media. but I went to my University of Maryland alumni events. I went to the National Association of Black Journalists events. Um, and so I was like networking there. Networking looked very different for me then because I didn't know what I was doing. I was actually very shy, very, very uncomfortable. And I also was not very well received because people would say to me, wait, people are losing their jobs and then you left your job. So that wasn't like a fruitful endeavor at that point. But I was just trying to do everything within my power to get back in the business. And my biggest fear was like, oh my God, what if I'm like a one hit? Like I only got this job and I can't get any other job out there. So I just was trying to do the best that I can. And so one of the doctors that had most of the surgeries, right? He had on his calendar that there was a week where he was going to take off. I think it was like spring break for his kids because I want to say it was like in March. March or April that time. And so I saw that, he had a bulk of the cases. So I saw that he was going to be out and I decided, okay, when this doctor is out, I'm going to be out. And I did what I had done before. If you've watched my kind of intro video, I talk about how I got my first job. So I kind of recreated that where I told news directors in strategic markets that I had identified that I was going to be in town, lying, right? And I was like, I'm going to be in town. Would you meet with me? And so I told my agent this as well. Like, I'm taking this week to do that and then organize this whole trek. So I woke up one morning, flew to Buffalo, as in New York, um, interviewed there. Early evening, flew down to Nashville. Um, I stayed with Dr. Sib. And if you are part of NABJ, you probably know Dr. Sib, who's an angel. I'd only met her maybe twice in person before, once or twice. And we met at a different conference and there were like a handful of Black people there. She was lovely. She had done a resume critique for me before. And she had said, if you ever need anything, I'm here. And so I called her. I'm like, well, I've got an interview in Nashville. And she was just like, all right, why don't you stay at my house? So I stayed with her. Again, at this point, she's a perfect stranger. Stayed with her that night, woke up the next morning. She made me pancakes. I could just like envision it right now. She made me pancakes. She gave me tips because she had worked at that station. And then she said a prayer. And then I went to that interview, drove because I had rented a car when I got to Nashville, drove from that interview in Nashville, drove to Charlotte where my agent had set up another interview the next day, stayed with my friend Heather in Asheville, woke up early the next morning for my interview in Charlotte, like to drive to Charlotte. I was exhausted at this point, right? Took the interview in Charlotte, drove to Atlanta to hang out for a day before flying back home. So I would tell people I did that and they'd be like, you did what? I was just like, look, like I was just so tired of waiting. I felt like I was like flat footed. I just felt like, man, I need to like shake some stuff up. But again, it's during the recession. People were being furloughed. People were being laid off in mass. And here I am trying to like shake some stuff up. But I'm always, trying to do stuff like if everybody's just applying from home, let me get in front of you. Because I always felt like if I could get in front of you, I can like close the deal. So the Nashville interview bombed. I knew that didn't go. I knew they didn't like me when I was there. Buffalo, when I left there, kind people, but I was like telling Jesus, I'm like, I know I'm desperate right now, but all they talked to me was about how much snow they get. And I think I'm going to die here if I go here. I know I'm desperate. I know I need a job real bad, but please do not open this door. And then Charlotte, crickets. For literally like 2 months, maybe 3 months, I didn't hear anything. Ended up getting that job. And by the time they told me they wanted they wanted me to come, they wanted me to move like very quickly. Like I literally waited months because this is like typical news fashion, right? You have me out here damn near ghosting me, right? I'm thinking, okay, I didn't get it. And, I thought it was like poor form. I didn't hear from you. But I ended up getting it. There was like internal whatever, ended up getting it and having to move just a few weeks later. That's how it happens. It's like 0, 0, 0, 0 to 100. And so I was out of the business for like 8 or 9 months. And that experience taught me that I never, ever, ever want to be in a position where I am desperate for a job ever again, where I felt flat footed. I felt like people were just avoiding me, because that's what happens when you're like desperation. They smell desperation coming and they just ghost you. They say whatever they need to say in your face, and then you never hear from them. And I just hated that feeling so much. And it was so hard for me. And I was like, I will do everything in my power to never be in this position again. And thankfully, I have never been in that position again. I hope that continues. Have I been close? Real close. Real close. But what happened subsequently, I didn't just say that to myself. What happened subsequently is that I started doing the little things that I knew to do to make that promise a reality to myself. So whether it was, taking NABJ, which is the National Association of Black Journalists Conference, I would definitely go whether my contract was up or not. When your contract's not up, it's actually a better time to go because you're, again, not in desperation mode, looking for your next, job. So actually, before I did all of that, I like laid out the foundation of where am I trying to go? Because I didn't know what to do, but I was like, first, let me figure out where I'm trying to go, and then I can figure out what I need to do from that. And so it was like the goal was to get back home to DC market, WRC, NBC4, preferably. That was the home station, to work there. And so how do you work backwards? Well, near DC, there's the Baltimore market. In the interim, there's this Nashville market that wins all the awards, that has the most amazing photographers. And I had already made connection with their management. So what I would do was I would go to NABJ, the conference, and I would target the places that I would want to go. Now, places that I wasn't qualified for immediately, and I knew that. So I wasn't going to them saying, like, asking for a job. I was going to them to create the relationship, to have a personal touch point, and then try to become memorable, right? And so I would follow up. I would send my tapes at that point. Then it became DVDs, before it became links. And I would just send it out every few months to these targeted places. And I would always end the email saying, thank you so much for investing in my future. And I would get ghosted most of the time. Most of the time, nobody said anything. But I always was like, all right, if I know I have talent, but I know I'm not like at my potential. I need to grow. And so my tape's not amazing, right? But I knew if I could show, or I believed, I didn't know, I believed that if I could show my growth over time, they would be like, man, she was like this and this time. And then a year later, she grew to this. Like, let me hire her because I know that she's going to grow. So even if I wasn't there yet, I was hoping that them seeing my growth over time and my consistency and my work ethic about it, that would put me over the edge, even if my raw tape couldn't do that. So anyway, I started doing this over and over and over and over again, and added to it when I felt like I needed to be a better public speaker. I started volunteering myself for local events, since I was a reporter, and they often ask people on air to do events instead of waiting for the station to tap me for an event. I would go to networking events and say, can I host your next thing? I mean, I've been in church basements and small little venues for little startup this and startup that on my own time, not getting paid for it, just so I could refine that skill. Because I was like, oh, they pay people to speak. Let me go ahead and practice now. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just going to practice now to get better at it. And when I was in Nashville, I would drag my friend Faith with me, and she would always laugh because right before I was supposed to go on stage, I'd always go to the bathroom and she'd be like, are you going to go put toilet paper under your armpits? And I'm like, yep. Yes, I am. Because it made me so nervous. So I got uncomfortable. I went to conferences. I put myself in awkward positions, all because of that experience after my first job of being desperate for a job and how I felt begging people for an opportunity who didn't have an opportunity. I mean, again, it was a recession. It's not their fault, but it just felt all awful. I just hated it so much. So who cares? Like, what is the point? I started by saying, don't wait until you're ready to prepare. In fact, saying you're ready means that you're probably too late, right? Or circumstances have forced you to be ready. And that's not a situation you want to be in. Life is going to life, you never know, but that's not a situation you want to be in. It wasn't until I had that experience, thankfully I had it in my mid 20s, where I realized the power of having options. The goal wasn't to find another job. The goal was to have options. Options means money in the bank. Options means a network you can tap into. Options doesn't have to be this concrete other opportunity. It just means being able to have something to leverage. When I got that job in Charlotte, do you think I negotiated? Absolutely not. I was so desperate. Yes, we did not negotiate anything. And again, it was another job where I got paid no money. I was still struggling when I was there, but I needed a job so badly. And when it comes to negotiation, there was no negotiation. There was no position of strength for me. So I was stuck, and I hated feeling that way. And also, waiting until you're ready just means that you think you control the timeline. And I think about it this way, that waiting until you're ready means that your blessing could come and it has no choice to pass you by if it's not on your timeline. And for those of faith, I'm no theologian or anything like that, but I truly believe that God's promises will be fulfilled, whether you choose to answer the call or somebody else is tapped on the shoulder to answer the call. God has really big with or without you energy, right? Either you're going to hop on this train or you're going to wait on the platform to see if another train is coming. Who knows if or when another train will come? So, yes, God has really big with or without you energy. Not long ago, a friend of mine, I want to say it was like 2022 to 2023, like that the turn of the year, right? The new year. And a friend invited me to be a part of this accountability group. And the whole idea was that we would like set our intentions for the next year and then meet like once a month to give each other an update, to just hold ourselves accountable for getting said things done. Made sense. Up my alley. I had just blown up my life. I was trying to, get my sea legs still. I welcome that opportunity. So our December meeting that we had, we're like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to outline what it is that we want. And then the January meeting would be to, okay, what is our plan to achieve it? So we're outlining what we want. And then my friend at the time was saying, oh, girl, all right, I saw this journal that would be perfect for this. Let's all get the same journal. And girl, there are these pens. They write so smooth. They're colored pens. And then we can have our colored pens. I can buy you, so I could get it sent to you. You want me to buy you one? And I'm like, no, I use the old fashioned third grade composition book. Like, or a regular schmegular notebook with a pen that I probably got from, for free in a bag. Like I'm not particular in that way. I don't want to use a book. I don't want all of that. Meantime, I'm creating a plan of how to execute, and she's like very gung-ho about this journal. And she criticized me for it when I said, no, of course, you're going to say that. I knew you were going to say that, like the journal is great. You always have problems with all these things. And, she criticized me for that. And so we had maybe 3 meetings total before I dropped out, because if you listen, I'm intense. I recognize I'm an intense person. And when I say I'm going to do something, when I'm like steadfast on it, it's going to get done. And so we didn't have the group of us. It was just 3. Our energies did not match. So I went and bowed out from the group. But I recite that experience to ask, are you doing all the ancillary things, or are you doing the actual thing? Are you waiting until you get the notebook, get the pens, have on the perfect sweatpants, are wrapped up in the perfect blanket, make the playlist, have the perfect candle to set the mood, are writing down everything, taking time to think about it, for like taking a very long time to think about it? Are you just going to do the thing? Are you just going to do the thing? Because that all just makes you feel really good to like check those by. Like, but are you just going to actually just do the thing? Do the thing that gets you the thing that you say that you want. Again, all of this comes from knowing for 9 months I was begging for work. It was a tough, thankfully I have a family, right? And thankfully I got that part-time job, because what I won't be without is a job. Like I work and I will work anywhere, right? Like I'm going to go ahead and be able to make money somehow. Can I make money the way I want to make money, but I'm going to work, right? Like, so I'm grateful to Greater Washington Orthopedic Group, GWOG, as we called it, especially the ladies in GWOG, because they held me down from 17 years old until 26, 27 years old, 10 years, 10 whole years with them. And so again, it's the work is not transactional. It's not hustle. It is planting the seeds. And planting the seeds, I ended last week saying it could actually be fun. It's super fun. It's expanding your tribe in a really organic and authentic way. It's inviting people in. That's how you get the dots that I was talking about last week. It's about doing the things that you love. It's about, for me, exercising my journalistic curiosity outside of work, applying it to more than a shooting, like applying it to other things that I am interested in learning. Because if I have curiosity about this one thing, then I've got a curiosity about other things, and giving myself permission to explore it in so many different ways, aligning myself with groups that do that work that's mission driven. I don't have to know how it all works. I just wanted to be there and be a part of it and meet the other people who feel aligned as well. And then guess what? We become friends. And that, ever since the Macon job, I talk about it in entrepreneurship, but actually it goes back much further than that. Ever since the Macon job, every other job has come from somebody I know, knowing somebody, or just somebody I know. Like it's all been connected through my connections. They say luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So don't wait till you're ready to prepare. That's all I got to say. See you next week. Thanks for listening to The Next Best Thing with Aundrea Cline-Thomas, a Mountain Court Media production. The music was written, recorded, and produced by Gavin Casey, also known as Dark Purple. Now, if you like what you heard, please subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and write a comment on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to share it with friends. I hope this episode helps you on your journey. See you next time.